Vanderbilt's young wide receivers are poised for a big breakout in 2025.
You are Locked On Vandy, your daily podcast on the Vanderbilt Commodores, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Guys, welcome into the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Corey Burton. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So today's show is action-packed. We talk Vandy boys take 2 of 3 in the Desert Invitational. What's the good, the bad, and the ugly from the desert? What's to take away from this baseball team? The Vandy basketball team lost a heartbreaker. However, they must get over these second half collapses. It's going to be a problem in tournament time. But for Vandy football, this group of young wide receivers are poised for a big breakout in 2025. And nobody will be happier about that than Diego Pavia. So let's take a look at this passing game, because we talked about kind of what it means for Eli Stowers to come back. We talked about that last week. I mean, that's going to be kind of the centerpiece. He's the NFL guy. He's going to be kind of that Swiss Army knife utility guy, can do it all type player. But we need something more. And Junior Sherrill can't be it. That was the case a year ago. Quincy Skinner kind of fell off a little bit, was banged up, not productive, all that stuff. But Junior Sherrill, and I've said this before, needs to be in the slot. That's his natural position. I've said that from day one. There needs to be 2 outside receivers that can step in and be those guys, so that when you go 3 receiver sets, you can put Junior Sherrill in the slot, and you'll have a nice explosive slot at that. And so that's more of his natural position. And that's not a shot at Junior Sherrill. That's not to say he can't play outside, but his optimal position is running from the inside. Seam routes, crossers, speed outs, from the interior position, things like that. Jet sweeps. He's really good in special teams as well. He is a quintessential slot receiver. And Vandy, they have outside guys. Chance Fitzgerald is going to come in. I think he's going to be really good. And there's going to be some other options on the outside, but it's going to come down to this. One of these young guys has to break out. All right. And one of these young guys has to gain the trust of Diego Pavia. And the first one that comes to mind to me, honestly, is Joseph McVay. Now, he is very raw. He ended up redshirting. He needed to, I think. There were some deficiencies. There were some things happening throughout the season with his development. But I just think this is going to be a good situation for him, because, I think he's ready. And just as I was looking at the show and planning out the show, I noticed that the first thing that popped up on my X feed was Diego Pavia retweeting Joseph McVay's highlights and talking about, his quote was the MF troop up top. Now, what that means is, dude, Joseph McVay can take the lid off of a defense. He is the home run threat that this offense is looking for. He's just got to get into the lineup, and he's got to be more consistent, and he's got to be that guy. He's somebody that you stick him on the outside, he's gonna burn his guy for a post, because Vandy's gonna be good at running the ball. We talked about McKalen Young, we talked about Cedric Alexander, we talked about the running back room and how things marry up with the option game, with what Diego Pavia can do. But just think of the play action game, the shot plays, just kind of the longer, more vertical routes. This guy puts vertical pressure on a defense like no other. And so this is going to be something, that I like. And as a player, that's what you need, right? And he's been in the system for a year. He's got a little bit of rapport with Diego Pavia. He has a chance to be one of those outside guys. I mean, those outside spots are up for grabs. Like I think every wide receiver spot is up for grabs. I think it's kind of like, okay, well, Junior Sherrill, you're going to fit in somewhere because you can be productive, but we've got some talented, unproven guys. And this is probably, out of all the receiver rooms, this is probably the most unproven, yet one of the more talented wide receiver rooms in the conference. Like this room, the potential of what lies at that position group is, camera, lost the camera. The potential of what lies at that position group is this. You have a set of guys that have all this ability, but is raw. Like Chance Fitzgerald didn't get his chance at Virginia Tech. Why? Because he's raw. He needed that development, and he needed an offense that could take advantage of that. And he needed a place where he would come in with a legitimate shot at starting. Trent Hudson the same way. He transferred in. He was Diego Pavia's teammate 2 seasons ago. He transfers in. He's looking for an opportunity. So there's a lot of that to be had, and there's a lot of great guys that could step up and do that. So when you look at the names, it's like, okay, this guy could do it. Oh, okay, well, I like this guy. This guy could do it, and we're going to go over some of those names. But to me, Joseph McVay, I think, has the biggest breakout potential. Just if you don't believe me, go watch his film that he posted. He posted practice film, and that's, he was winning reps in practice. He was getting separation in practice. And I think for these wide receivers, they're going to get some really good work against these DBs this spring. I think the whole thing with Clark Lee saying all that stuff about the competition, that is going to be especially true for the wide receivers versus the corners. The corners are much more seasoned, so these guys are going to have to work to get open. And that's great. That is phenomenal for these guys. And I'm excited about that because you're going to really see who's going to be battle tested, who's not going to be battle tested, who's, one or two of these guys are going to have to hit the portal. Probably one, if I had to guess. There's going to be, I think they're going to have to cut the roster down by 10 anyway. And so you're going to see there's going to be some tough decisions in the portal. So what I like here is this, okay? This group is really, really talented, but coming in, you would like to see McVay and Fitzgerald just kind of push those outside spots so Junior Sherrill can go down into the slot. I think Junior Sherrill's the best slot that we have this year. Bosky Barrett, I think, is somebody that has a lot of potential as well. He's a really good true slot guy. He did some good things in the bowl game, but again, you could see there's a reason why he didn't play a whole lot, right? He just couldn't quite do it. Couldn't quite develop a little bit. But he's, again, this is gonna be an important spring for him because he's got to show that, okay, I am the best option at the slot. Junior Sherrill is out there on the outside. If they ever want to bring Sherrill down and play in the slot, like I think that's going to be the home run. Like Richie Hoskins is good, but he's just okay. Bosky Barrett has all the talent in the world. It's just very raw in his route running, very young in his development as far as a pass catcher. That happens. And that's why I think he'd be a great backup to Junior Sherrill. And I think Richie Hoskins is probably one of your odd men out. Tristan Brown needs a little bit more seasoning. I think he's going to be good as a reserve. I think, honestly, your odd man out is Jeremiah Dillon. I think, unfortunately for him, he just couldn't quite catch on. Redshirt junior. You've got some more freshmen coming in from, you got Mississippi State transfer Trent Hudson coming in the summer. You've got LeBron Hill. You've got some of these other guys that they signed. I just don't think for Jeremiah Dillon, I don't know that this is working out. So, unfortunately, unless he really shows something, he's going to be the odd man out. But a lot of these guys, because, I think the potential of having these freshmen on the team, like I think you have a little bit more development room with those younger guys than you do with a redshirt junior, a guy that spent a lot of time at Ole Miss and couldn't quite catch on with what we're doing here at Vanderbilt. Maybe he's somebody that hits the spring transfer portal goes somewhere and really flourishes. If that's the case, I hope he flourishes here. Like I think what we signed him to be able to do is to be able to take the top off the defense, and that's what Joseph McVay ended up doing. He ended up jumping him on the depth chart and doing that against Missouri, and Jeremiah Dillon didn't really get any action. But this, like I said, it's going to be an extremely competitive spring. So this is going to be, out of all the position groups to watch, this group versus the corners, I think is going to be, I think is going to be top-notch cinema as far as like the storylines and things like that. The spring game is going to be incredible. Like these guys are going to be fighting tooth and nail because everything is, I feel like, and even, yes, Junior Sherrill was good, but like everything is wide open. The configuration of this wide receiver core is wide open. And I think you're going to finally find a group that when they come in, they're, to wrap up this point, you're going to see them break out because they have to, because these guys are going to have to earn it in practice just to get onto the field. So you're going to see some production out of these guys. You're going to see a much more consistent group and a much more battle-tested group and a much more intelligent group as far as, intelligence within the system, a rapport with Diego Pavia, and you're going to see a group that's hungry, that's talented, and it's going to look totally different from a year ago. Like a year ago, I didn't know the wide receivers existed. Like I thought it was just Eli Stowers and some other guys out there in uniform. They would make a catch every once in a while. I think it's going to be a lot different than that. I think you're going to see a lot of guys that can create separation. I think you're going to see a lot of talented guys that can get out there and really make some plays. Joseph McVay, one of them, Junior Sherrill in the slot, Chance Fitzgerald. I think Bosky Barrett is going to be somebody that emerges throughout the course of the season. I don't think he emerges right away, but I think he's somebody that does emerge as the season goes on. I think he's somebody that's going to get better week in and week out. The more practice he gets, the more reps he gets, he's going to be better. Junior Sherrill can bump down. Chance Fitzgerald, I think, is going to get his shot. Trent Hudson, when he comes in the summer, like summer camp's going to be an extension of spring with all the other guys coming in. Like it's going to be fierce competition. And like you make a mistake and you may never get back on the field. And that's just kind of what this wide receiver room looks like. There's no bona fide guy. There's no solid number one. That's what we're trying to find here. So it's going to be interesting. I'm excited about it. I know Diego Pavia is excited about it because he's going to get whoever those three guys that's going to be starting at wide receiver are going to be dogs, like dogs, because they're going to be an 11 personnel lot. So whatever those three guys are, it's going to be, he's going to know, and he's going to be excited about it. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. This is a position group to watch, especially in spring practice. Well, speaking of watching and speaking of exciting, well, the basketball team is trying to make things exciting. Unfortunately, they didn't quite follow through. We'll talk about that next. But first, let's talk FanDuel. Yeah, when the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on that than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because with FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you missed the opening tip-off or want to bet in the fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. If you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. So I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three. I never feel like I've missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. So right now, new FanDuel customers get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. So make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen each and every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So if you need a second listen, Chris Gordy, Locked On SEC, make sure you check him out. Does a phenomenal job, has great guests, great insight around the league, and we squad up every week, and he leads he drives the ship on that. So it's a great show. You should check it out. If you need a listen after that, perhaps check out Locked On Ole Miss. He's Stephen Willis is the #1 listen to Ole Miss podcast. He's He's the leader in the game. So you should go check that out. You should go see why. It's great insight. Even if you're not an Ole Miss fan, it's still interesting. So you should check that out. But anyway, switching over to hoops. How many of you, raise your hand, guilty, if you watched the first half of that game, it was like really excited, like that's the best first half we've ever had. We're going to win this game. We just got to finish it out. And it just came all crashing down. Yeah, that was me. I fired off a few tweets. I don't know if I jinxed it. I apologize if I do. But what is going on with these second half collapses? What's in the immortal words of Jerry Seinfeld, what's the deal? Right? What's the deal? Like, here's my takes, by the way. What we want to answer the question of what's happening in the second half, man. There's my take on it. But before we get to that, I want to talk. There are a lot of positives from this game. I don't want to get away from that fact. There's a lot of positives. All right, it's the best first half all season. I think that's very promising. We were red hot. We're on the road, too. Like, that doesn't usually happen. Jason Edwards and Jalen Carey are going to be they are stars. They're not going to be. They are. And this is this is something that I think you're seeing. You're seeing a nucleus of a team. You're seeing a team gel. You're seeing them gel each and every week, and I think that's important. At some point, the last hurdle is those second half things. But what really makes this team fun to watch and exciting to watch is this: they have a clear identity. They're gritty. They're tough, and they just flat get after it, man. They play so dang hard. They play together. And you would have never, if you knew nothing about this Vanderbilt team, if you knew nothing about them, and I told you that this team just met each other in June, this team did not exist as a unit until June, you would have been like, you would have had this stunned look on your face, like, no way, like you wouldn't believe it. And that's the truth. That's the God honest truth. But here's my thing about the second half. Okay. We need to talk about that a little bit. What's happening? I think I don't want to say they're getting complacent because they're still playing hard. So they're not. I don't know that they're complacent. I don't know the right word to put to. It's like right on the tip of my tongue. I don't know how to pinpoint that, but it's just like they lose their concentration. They start playing out of character. It's like they get a little tighter, if that makes sense. They start turning over the ball. They start taking ill-advised threes. They just don't move the same way they do in the first half in a lot of these games, right? It's either that or they just flat run out of gas. I mean, being in foul trouble in this game didn't help. Being in foul trouble, losing your two big guys, Jalen Carey and Devin McLaughlin, to getting fouled out, that doesn't help at all. But before that, they had lost momentum, and I think it's because like they start to kind of feel the pressure a little bit because this is a new team. I think that's the other side of having a team that still hasn't really, like, in the grand scheme of it, in the grand scheme of a grand timeline, they really don't know each other all that well. Despite they've been together since June, like it'd be one thing like if it was like a small core of guys and then they added a lot of pieces, but this is a completely new team. And I think some of that does still factor in. It has to. It's the only explanation. Like there's some sort. It's not like a lack of trust, but it's like it's sort of that. It's like I don't want to call it lack of trust because they do trust each other, but it's like they just, I don't know. Like there's just some mental block or some like. I don't know. I guess the best way to define is lack of concentration. That's the best way I can go. They lose focus. It just seems like they lose the ability to understand what got them to that point, and then they just lose it all because the other team at home especially starts to kind of fight back and starts to kind of they start to make shots. The crowd starts to get into it, and it's a combination of like, you play tighter, you get a little nervous, and it just all breaks down. The fundamentals break down. The shot selection gets worse. It just almost seems like they're playing against themselves, and they can't get out of their own way. And things that were so and it's a whole mindset thing. It's all mental, I think, because they're doing it, like they're trying the same thing. It's just mental. I don't know how you break it, but it is mental, because they get into a tighter mindset where I think they're thinking about what they're doing. They're trying to be more intentional, and a lot of times when you try to be more intentional, like I'll give you a golf example. Like when you're in a groove and you're hitting dots, you're hitting seeds off the tee, you're throwing darts from the fairway, and you're draining putts, and you're just in a groove. What if you ask most golfers when they're in a groove, you ask them, what were you thinking about out there? Nothing. I was just swinging, doing just muscle memory. I was just swinging and hitting. I wasn't thinking about anything. I was thinking about, okay, I need to use my 5-iron, and I'm just going to groove it because I know I can hit this shot. And I didn't have a worry in the world. That's the first half mentality. But as soon as, like you in the game, going back to my golf example, like you could be in a groove for like 3 or 4 holes. And then all of a sudden on that 5th hole, you shank one off the tee. And now you start thinking a little bit. Okay, now you're like, oh God, why did I shank that? Oh crap. Like now I'm in trouble. Now I got it. And now you're playing a shot from like in between 3 trees, and you're like, okay, I can only hit it right here. And you start thinking about that shot, and all of a sudden you hit the trunk of the one tree you can't hit, and it comes right back at you. Like that's the kind of, and then you think about the next shot, and then you're trying to get the ball up the fairway, and you end up hitting it in the bunker or the water, or next thing you know, you've been the last 4 holes, you've been automatic from 6 feet. Now all of a sudden you just yank it to the right, and now you spend the next 3 or 4 holes just trying to get out of your own head. And that's what Vandy basketball is doing. That's what this basketball team's doing. They're in a groove in the first half. They're dropping shots 3 feet from the pin. They're draining birdie putts. They're hitting 300-yard drives down the middle of the fairway, and it's like it's clockwork. They're just in a groove. And then all of a sudden they come out of halftime, they shank one off the tee, and then by the time they get it back, it's too late. By the time they start grooving, your score is foobarred, and you can't get it back. And that's the kind of thing that they've got to kind of do. Like the great golfers, they hit a bad shot and they just go, okay, I'm just going to hit a easy shot. I'm going to take my L for this hole, but I'm just going to try. I'm going to get back in my groove. And they don't even think about it. They just go and they're just, okay, I'm going to hit this shot. It's very nonchalant. So that's kind of the mindset that they need to have in the second half. Like they need to have, even when disaster strikes, like they just need to just settle down, take a breath, and go. And that's what they're not doing. And so that's the best example I can give. But this baseball team, off to a good start. A lot of great things, obviously with baseball, it takes it a minute, but we'll talk about that next. All right. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen. We're wrapping up the show here at Locked On Vandy. Follow that on all social media platforms. Follow us on YouTube, subscribe, hit that bell notification, hit that bell for notifications of any content that comes along the channel. Also listen on the audio side, download that. If you're in the car and you can't watch YouTube, we are on, wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, wherever it is, go get it. There's going to be an app soon. Like if you're on a Roku, like if you're chilling at a Roku and you're like, hey, my friend, one of my best friends, he has a really good podcast about Vanderbilt. And they're like, no, dude, post it. Oh man, the mafia, the Roku mafia is out to get me. They cut my camera. But anyway, like you can say, hey, I don't believe you. right? And so that'll be that'll be something you could do, something cool you could do. Well, anyway, as we wrap up the show, I think one of the more exciting things in Vanderbilt sports is baseball. A lot of people get fired up about it. It's a fun thing to talk about. It's a fun, they're two-time national champions in this decade, and well, actually last decade, but in this century, I guess. And they're exciting. Tim Corbin's done a phenomenal job there. Honestly, he's revamped the program a little bit. I mean, I think he's kind of followed suit with basketball and football. Obviously not a change in leadership, but he has revamped some things within the organization with their recruiting strategy. He's with NIL, like he's getting involved with that. New coaches, new way of doing things, way more transfers than usual, and signed a really good freshman class. And he's kind of, I guess you could say, getting with the times. I don't know how else to describe it. But anyway, they were invited to play in the MLB Desert Invitational out in Phoenix. And it was a tough road trip because, like, Nebraska's a good baseball team. Grand Canyon is potentially conference champions. And, of course, UC Irvine, I think they were in Omaha last year. I think Grand Canyon was in Omaha or actually made it to a super regional something. I can't remember exactly, but I'm not going to look it up. Anyway, three really good games to lead off a season with, and when you're talking about baseball, it's important to get that right. But here's my takes. Here's my takes with baseball. Okay, here's what I took away from this weekend, because there's a lot of things that were good. There's some things that I just think need to be working on, and some of it is just early season stuff that usually kind of works itself out. But the first thing is, I think starting pitching is going to be good. They need more innings. They need to go deeper into the games. But I think they're going to be good. McIlvain struggled a lot against Nebraska, but we were expecting that. And I'm not panicked about it yet. Now, if he like 3, 4, 5 starts in a row and it's the same thing, then, you should look at, cutting the cord on that and finding a different option as your Saturday guy. But as of right now, I think McIlvain just needs more innings just to shake the rust off. There were some flashes. He's super talented. He's an early round MLB guy. Just needs some more work. But the rest of the starting pitching was good. Bowker was good. JD Thompson was good. It's been a really, really good run with starting pitching. So it's going to be awesome to watch those guys work. The bullpen, I think, is going to be strong overall. They need the freshmen to get up to speed. I think the Sunday game, the game against UC Irvine, you threw a lot of pitchers, a lot of freshmen in that contest, and they gave up 6 runs in the 6th, which is not great. But the bullpen's always going to kind of be a roller coaster just by nature, and especially early in the season. So I don't think it's time to panic about the bullpen. But again, you got some freshman arms, and that's going to happen occasionally. But the third thing is what I loved was the approach at the plate was like 1,000,000 times better, or whatever that number I have right there. And I look forward to the rest of the season to see how this hitting develops. Like they usually say, hitting's the last thing that kind of catches on. But the changes they made, especially on the offensive side, the approach at the plate, pitches they're looking for, like they're driving the baseball most of the time. And that's good. Now, Lady Luck has got to be a little bit better to us. Like I think in a lot of instances, especially against Nebraska, they were hitting the ball hard, just right at somebody. And that's just kind of those tough luck situations where, like, okay, you barreled this baseball, but it went right at somebody for an out instead of an extra base hit. Now against Irvine, you hit the ball really hard, and then you kind of go on a little run of a couple innings where it's like 1, 2, 3, you're swinging it back, like just going back to that like impatient approach at the plate where you're just flailing, and then you end up rolling over easy ground balls to short and second base, and those make for easy outs, and you don't even make the pitcher work into his count. You get up, like I think it was the 7th inning. Vanderbilt allowed their pitcher to get out on like 6 pitches, 1, 2, 3, and 6 pitches or something like that. It was something stupid. But then, they hit a grand slam. Riley Nelson hits a grand slam. They get the bases loaded. They put some pressure. Great at bats. Just all throughout that game, and Riley Nelson just drives one out of the park, and Vandy takes the lead, and they don't relinquish it. And so, like the approach just overall has been great. You're seeing a lot of extra base hits. You're seeing the ball hit hard, and you're seeing them presenting themselves with run scoring opportunities. Now, as the season goes, leaving a small village on the bases, to quote Harry Doyle for Major League, with Pedro Serrano leaving a small village of runners on base. But, leaving a lot of guys on base, that's an early season problem. That's something that good hitting teams will naturally kind of work out of. And it's baseball. Occasionally that's going to happen. But, for it to be a problem, it was a problem last year. And for it to be a problem, that's got to happen consistently. If you're inconsistent with leaving a lot of guys on, then it's just not really much of a problem. So anyway, I'm excited about this baseball season. We're near the end of the show here, but this baseball season is going to be fun. This was a really good tournament to kick the season off with, because these are 3 highly competitive teams that will be in postseason play, maybe even coming to a super regional near you. But anyway, But baseball's underway now, and it's going to be an exciting season. I think it's going to be a really good bounce back season. This team is, as most years, this team's thinking Omaha. So maybe that can come to fruition. We'll see how the season goes, but this is it's going to be exciting. Football's going to be exciting. I think Vanderbilt athletics buying into NIL has been a difference maker, and I'll leave it at that. So let me know. Hopefully you guys have a good week. If you're here in the Nashville area, be safe with all the flooding and then the snow coming possibly. It's going to be kind of a crazy weather week here in Nashville. So if you're in this area, be careful. And we'll see you back here next time on the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. Peace.